All right, y'all. We're getting into 2023 draft prospects. We got three guys on the docket today, working from the front to the back. Will McDonald, edge rusher out of Iowa State. Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon. And Joey Porter Jr., cornerback out of Penn State. We're getting into all those guys and more coming up right here. Locked On NFL Draft. Let's go.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker, and you can follow me. You see it right there at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. We want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more odds, props, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, y'all, this is one of my favorite times of the year when we get to start diving into some prospects that we should keep an eye on. And I wanted to start from the front, work my way to the back, and start with edge rusher out of Iowa State, Big Will McDonald. And this was a guy who, going into this, I didn't really know much about. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I put out a question. Hey, I want to profile three guys on the Locked On NFL Draft Show. Who should I watch? Well, Will McDonald, he was one of the guys' names that came up. And it was a pleasant surprise because there was a lot of good. All right, first let's talk about some of his accolades here that he has won. First team All-American 2021, second team All-American 2021, third team All-American 2021. Now we know there's a bunch of different All-American teams, all right, but he's at one point been on the first, second, and third just from last season. He also was Big 12 Co-Defensive Lineman of the Year in 2021, first team All-Big 12. He was voted by the coaches in 2020 and 2021. Ted Hendricks Award semifinalist in 2020 and 2021. Defensive Scout Team Player of the Year 2018. I mean, listen, the accolades continue to go on and on. But one thing is extremely clear. Throughout his time in college football, this is a guy that has been very productive. And I think the awards kind of let you know a little bit about that. All right, this is a guy who chose Iowa State over schools like Minnesota and Baylor. He was a three-star recruit by 24/7 coming out of high school, but extremely talented. Not the biggest of guys. And when I say big, it's just there's some weight that can be added to his frame a little bit. 6'4", 245 pounds. So I'm not sure if that's quite his playing weight, but there are some times where the 245 pounds does show up. We'll talk about that. But let's get into some of these notes on what I'm seeing from the big guy. Immediately, the thing that jumped out of the film that I've watched so far, and again, I can't wait to see what he does this year coming up, but if you want to talk about a guy that looks like a big, long prospect and the bend that he has coming off of the edge, that was one of the first things that I was drawn to. You know, he was very smooth. He was very fluid of an athlete. He wasn't this big, stiff guy, but coming off of the edge, with his pass rush, when he wanted to use his speed, he was able to dip that shoulder, rip through, and beeline straight to the quarterback. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of these edge rushers now coming out. You're seeing guys are either one or the other, right? You're seeing the speed guy off the edge, or we're seeing like this big guy who's a little more of a stiff guy, maybe likes to play through contact. It didn't work from there. Well, he has no issue trying to win both ways. They did put him in, I don't want to say weird situations, but they did a lot of three-man front. And that was one thing where I felt like, man, that is a little bit more difficult on an edge rusher, especially a guy like him who is only 245 pounds. At least that's what he's listed at. If he's bigger than that, then maybe that makes more sense. But three-down guys, I mean, we're talking about a lot of double teams, a lot of getting chipped by other linemen, getting pushed into other guys, and I saw that consistently. I don't know if he's a guy that you're consistently going to want to put in position to have to beat double teams or have to work through that. That wasn't necessarily a strength of his. Time and time again, I saw him, especially whether it was versus the run or even in the pass, when they got multiple bodies on him, they were able to move him out of there. And I didn't think he was quite as stout against the run. But we all know, baby, the NFL right now is a passing league. So clearly he can work to improve and be more stronger at the point of attack against the run. But if you watch him as a pass rusher, that's where he stands out. And that's why he's most likely going to be a top first round pick, if not even higher than that. Top 15, I could see that potentially. That's what I'm projecting on from him from what I saw. He stays extremely active. Even in situations where the offensive lineman had a nice pass set and he was able to get to him and kind of beat him to the spot, he didn't stop there. He continued to work. And he'd spin off of a guy, he'd work, continue to work, and eventually sometimes it will result in him getting a hustle sack. That's tremendous because at the end of the day, you're not going to beat guys clean every single time. And I thought he beat guys clean enough times to know, okay, that's a strength of his, that active work ethic, relentlessness, and that was one of the words I wrote down, effort, relentless, like to continue to get to the ball. That jumped out time and time again. And not just against the pass. I thought it did against the run as well. There were times where you'd see him fight off blockers, get off the block, and then eventually chase down a guy because, the running back had to make somebody miss in space. And then next thing you know, you got big Will McDonald jumping on the guy's back, diving on him from the back. So this is a guy who has tremendous effort. And that's one thing that really jumps out to me. When I'm watching defensive linemen, a lot of times you could see like, okay, if he loses at the line of scrimmage, that's it. It's done. That wasn't the case with him, even against the run. Now, again, definitely has to improve and be stronger against the run at the point of attack, the anchor, all that stuff. And I would like to see him maybe work a little bit more of a bull rush. Does he have that? I will say this. When it comes to having a plan, I learned that from my guy Ayo with these defensive linemen. He wants the guys, have a plan and don't bail on your plan if it doesn't work right away. And I thought for him, he had a plan. He would come, he would give you a move, step outside, spin back inside, work some things. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. That's fine. But you see where his mind is and how he's trying to work to get towards a quarterback in a plethora of ways. And that was one thing that I felt like was very consistent throughout the few games that I watched of him so far. Now, this is just kind of a preseason type evaluation to see where his game goes to as we move towards this 2022 season. But so far, what I was seeing from Will McDonald, it was tremendous. Works pass rush moves consistently, stays active, keep working, can get a little high. And for a guy, 6'4", I thought that was one thing where when he gets high and he doesn't have that weight and that strength behind him, he can get pushed out of there a little bit. So that's something that he's definitely going to have to improve on, staying a little bit low. But he doesn't have an issue of not being able to get low. He doesn't have an issue of, oh man, I'm too stiff and I can't do this. He definitely has all the ability to really take his game to the next level. So this is a guy I was really excited to watch him. I'm like, man, why is nobody talking about him? Everybody talks about Will Anderson from Alabama. And I get it, that he's probably going to be the number 1 overall pick. But we need to start talking about Will McDonald a little bit too, because this is a guy who I was very excited to see out of Iowa State. So that's the first guy I wanted to profile here. We're definitely going to get into some of the other guys. But first, we want to talk to you a little bit about our good friends over at BetOnline. All right. BetOnline is your number 1 source for all of your sports betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports events, including MMA, boxing, and golf as well. Head over right now to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action going on at BetOnline, where the game starts. We want to thank you for making Locked On the NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, you don't just have to tune into Locked On NFL Draft. We got Locked On 49ers. We got Locked On Chiefs. You have Locked On all kind of podcasts across this entire network. Football, baseball, basketball, all of that. So type in Locked On wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm pretty sure whatever it is you're looking for, they got it. All right, so let's get to this next guy here. All right, and the next guy, his name might sound a little familiar. We got Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon. And this is a guy who, obviously, if you recognize the name Sewell, he definitely has a big brother. Big brother was just taken, Penn State was number 5 pick overall? sixth, no, because Jamar Chase was fifth, seventh, sixth, seventh, whatever. Penn Sewell, first top 10 pick to the Detroit Lions. Noah Sewell, this is the little brother. And this is a guy who, again, has some awards. Here we go. As a sophomore in 2022, he was a Walter Camp preseason All-American, Phil Steele preseason All-American, a lot of All-American awards, but I don't see the post-season awards. And I think I know why. While watching him, there were a few things that jumped out to me immediately. One, he's a firecracker. He does not care about his body. He is going to be relentless running to the ball. He does not care about his body or the person that he's trying to tackle. He's all gas, no brakes, which kind of can hurt him a little bit. There were a few games I watched live where he had to leave the game for a little bit, and eventually, he can come back. So he might be a guy where you deal with a little bit more injuries until he figures out how to, I don't want to say scale back because you want guys to play 100%. He definitely does, but figure out a way to protect yourself just a little bit. And I was thinking that I was going to be able to say, a lot of better things, more positive things, almost like how I did for, Will McDonald. Like, I love that. Everything I saw, I'm like, okay, I see the upside. Great. With Noah Sewell, can he take on blockers more square and keep an outside shoulder free? So a lot of times with these linebackers, you'll see them maybe try to make an offensive lineman miss. And if you can, all right, I'm fluid enough to make a guy miss in space, dip, go in and get a tackle. And I'm not saying that he just never did it. I would just say I don't think it happened as much as I would have liked to see. All right, so that was one thing. Didn't really keep that outside shoulder free. And what I mean by that is a lot of times he would pick a side trying to run around a guy, and then if they wall him off, they just wall him off, and now you create a big run lane. So there definitely was some of that. I thought he was very instinctual versus the run and pass, and then as I continued to watch, I'm like, kind of looks like he's guessing a little bit. Because when he's right. But when he's not, he just really blows up the play for the defense and makes it to where the offense can do whatever they want to do. So that's not ideal, especially with the linebackers, guys at the second level. Now, all fronts aren't created equal. Maybe Oregon last year, which I wasn't paying attention to the defensive line, but did they have the guys outside of Thibodeau, and we know what Thibodeau did, but the guys in the middle, were they taking on blockers and making it clean for a guy like Sewell to knife in and make tackles? A couple times I saw it, but for the most part, a lot of times guys kind of reaching that second level, and I saw him pick a side, and they were just taking him the way that he wanted to go, and the running back would just run right off that offensive lineman's butt. That is not ideal, especially for the guys at the next level, right? The DBs. They don't want a running back running full speed through this big hole, and now they have to take him on. He did a really good job. A lot of times he'd line up at the line of scrimmage, and then he'd kind of back off, and he'd read the quarterback. And there were several times I saw him getting the passing lane and knock passes down. So that was really good. But, again, kind of going back to some of these notes, does not get off blocks well. Didn't quite see that. You got to be able to disengage to get to the ball carrier, especially for a guy like him, because we see what the NFL is kind of going towards with a lot of these linebackers nowadays, right? Like a lot of them are former safeties or defensive backs in some extent, right? I cover the 49ers, Fred Warner, Drain Greenlaw, both of those guys, they're former defensive backs. And you look at Noah Sewell, and it's like, no, he is a linebacker, and he is a middle linebacker, but he's a little stiffer. I think because he plays 100%, he can overcome some of it. But if you're talking about, like a fluid linebacker and some of the guys that we've seen come out in recent years, he might not be quite that. All right, playing downhill, it looks pretty good, especially if he has to chase a guy sideline to sideline. Maybe not as fast as some of these guys that we've seen out of like Alabama last year or Georgia, right? And it's almost unfair to compare a guy to that Georgia defense because those guys were flying around full speed, hauling butt, right? But you still need a guy to be athletic enough to not only play well downhill against the run, which I think he does that fairly well when he comes clean, but also, can you turn around with tight ends? Can you wall off receivers? Are you able to get receivers in space? And I thought from that standpoint, there were just a little bit of stiffness issues. All right. One of my notes here, effort is his best attribute. It looks like he's guessing on run fits, a lack of lateral movement, And he felt almost like a boomer bust type guy. So he was going to fly in and he was going to make a play, or he was almost going to be non-existent. And what I meant by that is non-existent, just not very good, right? The outcome of it, what he did to kind of contribute to a poor outcome. I felt like those were things that kind of stood out time and time again. Now, again, the effort is there. And I feel like there's a clear area of where he is good, which running downhill against the run. But I wonder if that lack of fluidness, that lack of ability to really disengage from blocks, and you start to see that, is that going to hurt him throughout this process? So I know he's a guy that people are really high on. Again, I talked about it when we started this. Walter Camp, preseason first team All-American. Phil Steele, preseason All-American first team. Phil Steele again, Pac-12, preseason first team. But I don't see the awards after the season. So a lot that I feel like he has to do. Again, young, guy was a true sophomore last year. Has you work to maybe, be a little bit more agile in space, change your direction, improve on that. Those are things that I'll be looking for heading into this year, and definitely things where, teams are going to start trying to attack that. If you can't move backwards with truly having to cover guys in space. Spot dropping, he was fine. I thought he did a good job with that. Closing speed, that looked good. But when you really got to challenge your movement skills, I thought there was a little bit of stiffness there. All right, we got one more guy coming up. My guy, Joey Porter Jr. We're going to get to him next. But first, we want to talk to y'all a little bit about the good folks over at rockauto.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. And with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local auto parts store to have all the parts that you need. Why endure pointless and often seamless, intimidating questioning about your vehicle and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only thing that they happen to have in their warehouse? You got a computer with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So use that. And when you use it, you will save time and money. All right, why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same auto parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. I mean, listen, and even if you're not a do-it-yourselfer, like I'm not, but I had to because this motor thing went out on my wife's car that it worked the defroster or whatever, and his door just wasn't opening. Well, we had to go get that fixed. At the dealership, they were saying, that's going to cost you $450. No way. We ordered it from rockauto.com. It was much cheaper, and we did it ourselves. Thank you, YouTube, for showing me how to do that. All right. They have everything that you need at rockauto.com. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil. They even have new carpet. All right. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find a solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And right locked on in there, how did you hear about us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Joey Porter Jr., yes, you heard me correct. Joey Porter, I know, dad, former linebacker in the NFL, really good linebacker there. But this is his son out of Penn State, and this is a guy who got big, long body. All right, 6'2", 200 pounds, coming out of Penn State. He actually is hometown Bakersfield, California. Did not know that, but it looks like he went to a high school in Pennsylvania. So, is Joey Porter from Bakersfield? I'd be interested to see that. But anyways, we got Joey Porter here, and got some good notes, defensive backs. That's one of my specialties. I will say this. I watched a lot of Castro Fields, and Castro Fields was drafted to the San Francisco 49ers. So while watching Castro Fields, obviously you see a guy on the other side. You're like, man, who is this cornerback? And I see numbers. Number 9, Penn State. Okay, he made some plays. Okay, he's making some plays against Ohio State. Awesome. And it's like, that's Joey Porter Jr. Great. Okay, so let's talk about what we saw on this film. One, I like to watch guys that are really fluid. That's the first thing I'm looking for. Like, what type of fluidity do you have? I did not think that he was the most fluid defensive back. All right. And what I mean by that, there was a little choppiness. I think that's what I wrote in my notes. Yeah, choppy movements. And I was like, okay, it's choppy. Is is it choppy like that because he's scrappy, or is it choppy just because he just has choppy movements, right? Just not as fluid, not as smooth. But I'll tell you this, that did not matter. Bursty kid, saw him have to run with a couple of verts. Terrific, being able to stay on top of the receiver, really oftentimes beating the receiver to the ball or being closer to the ball when it landed than the receiver. That was really good. Watching him in some zones, did a really good job of reading 2-to-1. I thought that he could have a little bit more urgency getting to the 2 on those seams. All right, here we go. Take y'all to school a little bit here. 2-to-1 read. What is that, right? For a cornerback. A lot of times it's in a cover 3 type defense. All right, so we count the receivers outside in. So the furthest outside receiver close to the sideline, that's 1. Next receiver in, that's 2. Next receiver or back, that's 3. All right, then obviously the count starts over on the other side. Well, a lot of times in cover 3, because you have to cover an entire third, you have to read 2-to-1. Why do you read 2-to-1? Because the 2, that's the easier throw for the quarterback to make if he goes up the seam. So a lot of times you'll see defensive backs kind of split the difference there. All right. And I watched him. He did a really good job with his eyes. He's reading 2-to-1. 1 does a stop route. Okay, I know I'm responsible for 2 running up the seam. And I thought he did a good job there, but still could get there with a little bit more sense of urgency. All right. But nonetheless, his mindset is right and he's reading the right keys. All right. He had some technical things that I saw kind of jump up over and over. One of my first notes is punch with his outside hand and didn't move his feet. And I thought him not moving his feet was something that was pretty consistent. And when I say moving his feet, they're just not as active as I would necessarily like at the line of scrimmage. You can work on that, right? What can you teach? What can you teach? 6'2", fast kid, 200 pounds. Can't really teach that. But I can teach you this technique. And he had I thought consistently he would shoot his hands without really moving his feet, or maybe just be a little too patient, and then the guy just kind of go now, then now all of a sudden he's kind of in a panic mode. All right, that's something that he can improve on. But you could teach that up, man. I could teach that up in a couple months. All right. I thought his body reacted well when he was playing honest. All right, what does it mean to play honest? A lot of times at the defensive back position, we might know what's coming, or we have a tell in your offense based on the alignment and formation down and distance. It's like, okay, this is probably coming, and then you play with more anticipation. But when you're just playing honest and it's like, okay, I just have to read and react to whatever it is that he's doing, that's when you truly get to see someone's movement skills. And I thought Joey Porter Jr. passed that test over and over and over against big dog receivers, Garrett Wilson, some of these guys. I mean, big dog receivers. And did a terrific job on like a post corner somebody gave him. He was able to flip his hips, get there, and beat the guy to the ball. There was another time when Garrett Wilson ran out, up, and stop route. That's one of the harder routes to defend, especially from off coverage. Shut it down. Terrific job. Broke the ball up, got in guy's face. I love it. All right. In the red zone, there was a play where there was a free play down there, and he did a terrific job of working chest to chest and breaking up a ball in the end zone. It did not count on the stat sheet because a defender from Penn State jumped off sides, but nonetheless, terrific job by him breaking up that ball. So there was a lot that I really liked. And one thing that I feel like I just want to see him, take the next step in, just the technique. All right, just being a little bit more consistent, being a little bit more active with the feet at the line of scrimmage. Now, you don't have to give a whole lot of ground, and I like that he did not give ground, but just activate those feet a little bit more to where now at the line of scrimmage, I am ready to go. Joey Porter Jr., I believe people think he's a first-round caliber defensive back. Based on what I saw, I definitely think he's trending in that direction if he's not already there. A little bit older, redshirt junior. I don't if this website isn't updated, he's going into his redshirt senior year, so a little bit older of a prospect, but terrific player, has the size, has the speed, has the ability, get better with the technique, and we're talking about somebody that's definitely a first-round pick. All right, y'all, hope y'all like this, man. Diving into some of these prospects, this is the thing I love, watching the film, taking notes, and giving that to y'all on this show. We do have more shows coming up this week. We got John Harris, we got Rob Lang, and I will be getting my co-host back, Ryan Tracy, as well. But we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, you got Locked On 49ers with myself and Brian Pika. You got Locked On Chiefs with my guy, Ryan Tracy, and plenty of Locked On podcasts around this network. But that's going to do it for this episode I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.